All right, now we're going to talk about culture. We in our last presentation, we talked about planning, and part of that planning process is understanding your audience. So we're going to, for our next two segments, what we're going to do is talk, this time we're going to talk about culture, and then the next time we're going to talk about listening. These are all audience-based things, and so culture is a fun subject, but I think it's key in understanding our audience, especially where more and more our society is being more integrated culturally. And so that's what we're going to do today. Starting out with a quote, you probably heard the little saying that says you can't see the forest from the trees, right? Well, this is kind of a little take on it that's a little more apropos to our subject matter, the public speaking or communication in general. But the problem is when it comes to communication and culture is that we can't see the forest because we're in the middle of the trees. Do you think that's true culturally? Sometimes we're so ingrained in our own culture that it causes us to kind of look through different color, one colored glass, right? And so I think this is really appropriate when we're thinking about it. So what I'm trying to do today is kind of get you out of the forest so you can see it for what it is. And so we're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss it and how it relates to public speaking. So as we talk about it, that's where we're going to go with this. What I'm going to do, how many of you seen the movie Blast from the Past? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, I'm going to play a trailer from the movie Blast from the Past.
Nuclear wars sent the Weber family underground.
How long will we have to stay down here?
25 years.
35 years.
For 3 decades, they lived a fairly normal life. But now,
I wish that I could meet a girl. I've been thinking about that just these last 15 years or so.
they're finally letting their son come out and play.
Let me guess something. This is your first visit to La La Land.
Eve was tired of the same old guys.
I know you're like me. You know what? A lot of guys like me.
But there was something about Adam
I thought I'd never see you again.
Hey, down.
she couldn't resist.
Where on earth are you from?
Maybe Eve can guess.
Come here now. Okay. We live in Alaska. Are we getting hot?
Yes.
What do you mean you can get me laid?
Can we talk about that a little later?
This guy is unbelievable.
You still want to go girl hunting tonight?
Oh yes, I certainly do.
Go on, Romeo.
Shall we dance?
That great dude, he's jumping to the beat. He's been dancing in the street. He has to come.
From New Line Cinema and the director of The First Wives Club comes a romantic comedy
I told you I'd never driven before.
about making up for lost time.
You're in love with a guy.
What? I do not fall in love with weirdos who I've only known for 4 or 5 days.
Yes, you do.
And I don't fall in love with grown men who leave their pants when they see the ocean.
Yes, you do.
Nothing I do with her ever seems to be right.
You're a nice boy, but what Eve needs is a nice man.
I fell in love with you the very moment that I saw you. Thank you.
Brendan Fraser, Alicia Silverstone, Christopher Walken, and Sissy Spacek. Blast from the past.
You're a sex doll.
All right. Anybody want to describe what this movie is about? Do you want to describe it?
Okay.
No, you raised your hand.
I see. Perspective on, generational perspectives,
Okay.
attitudes, expectations. You change you get from one generation to the next. The expectations have changed completely. The lingo, the vocabulary, the advances, technology.
Okay.
Even the dating, the dating world has completely changed, even just from the time I was dating to my children dating.
Yeah. So, in this movie, how it plays out is that there was a family who lived in 1950s America. They, back in those days, most people had a bomb shelter. Most schools had a bomb shelter in the schools, so, because there was always this fear that we were gonna be attacked by the Russians, and that if we did, we needed to, the radiation and all of that kind of stuff was gonna, cause us some problems. And so what ended up, in the premise of this movie, this guy, the dad is a scientist, he's built this real high-tech bomb shelter. He's figured out that it's gonna take 35 years for the radiation to dissipate. And so he's built this thing and prepared it and made it so it would lock and wouldn't open for 35 years. So one day, there's a plane crash near their house. They start freaking out, thinking that the Russians have just attacked. And so they head to the bomb shelter, hit the button, and they're locked in there for 35 years. In the meantime, while they're down there, they have a child. What do you think they taught this child about?
Their own world, what they personally do.
Okay, what they personally knew, 1950s, early 1960s, America. Imagine 35 years later, you're this young man now, and the bomb shelter opens up in its time frame, and he goes out and experiences this whole new world. How would you respond? How would you react to that? Kind of different, huh? I think where their house used to be was I don't remember exactly what was above their home, but when they opened up the trap door, it was in a tattoo shop or something to that effect. And so he's like, this is what he's first exposed to. And then he goes out and experiences it, and it's really kind of an interesting take on learning a new culture. Well, that's kind of how it is for us. Sometimes we're so ingrained in the cultures we're in that we tend to not take into account other cultures. And if you're speaking in a public speaking situation, it is very key that you do that you key in on the culture of your audience, because it is going to be different. I have some statistics that I came across. It said this was in 1970. 1970s, 1 out of every 8 people in the United States would be African, or Africans, Hispanic, or Asian American. 1 in every 8. I can attest to that. I grew up in the 70s, and in my age of time, that's really how it was. In fact, in my high school, there were 2 African American students in my whole high school. Okay? So, it was pretty much people I knew. I was in that bubble, right? They said by 2050, what do you think the statistics would be?
Probably 6 out of 8.
6 out of 8? Okay, what else? Any other thoughts?
0.
I think by then everyone's gonna there's not gonna be one certain race. Everyone's gonna
Exactly.
mix and stuff. Cause already, a lot of black and white people are
Oh,
mixed, so
yeah.
they're not.
This
There's
is the
not
melting
as
pot.
many. So I think everyone's gonna be mixed by then, or at least pretty close to it.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
A lot of times
Yes.
you can't tell who's Irish, you can't tell who's French.
Yeah.
All
Well,
that's just weird.
this was done several years ago. So back then, this was what they expected it to be. 1 out of every 2, about 50%. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be by 2050, it's going to be a lot.
And
more mixed, and we're gonna be much more of a combined group, yeah.
Well, it's just like, I don't know, back then, like our parents were in school, they weren't teaching another language, like usually, and now, like even elementary kids are being taught in different languages, and
Mhm.
they're getting more like organized because they have to deal with that in society.
Yeah, in a business background, if you want to do business, you have to learn the cultures. Because it's worldwide business now, it's not, even if you work for Walmart, okay? Walmart has stores and work all over the world, even in China now, and so, yes.
Maybe culture will be less what you look like and more, kind of languages that you speak, or.
I think there still be some of that distinction, but I don't think it's gonna matter as much. I was reading a Time article just recently, and I didn't actually put it in the slides here, but it shows a timeline of intolerance in America. And it starts back in the 1700s, all the way through to our current situation. The whole article is America Islamophobic. But it listed all of these things, from the Japanese being interned in the camps when World War II started. We have some of the other ones, one that hits close to home, any of you that are LDS, it talks about the intolerance back in Missouri that took place. It shows this timeline, and it's really fascinating. So if you want a copy of the article, let me know, because it was in August, I think, of last year that the magazine came out. And I didn't put it in the presentation, so I apologize. But it really is. We're starting to we're really combining a lot of our cultures. When it comes to culture, there are two general views of culture. One is cultural evolution, which kind of is on the basis of Darwinism, where cultures evolve from a primitive to an advanced state. That was Darwin's teaching. And the other one is cultural relativism, which is that all cultures are different. No culture is inferior or superior. It is the generally accepted view right now. But those are two general views when it comes to culture. So I found a definition of culture. It goes like this. It's a set of values, beliefs, norms, customs, rules, and codes that lead a person to define themselves in a distinct group, giving them a sense of community. Good definition, right? Covers all the bases. Values, beliefs, norms, customs, rules, and codes. Now, to kind of further explain this, how many of you have heard the term agriculture? Okay, what does agri mean? Any thoughts? When you think of agriculture, what do you think of?
Farming.
Farm, right? Okay, so if you were to go to Utah State University or any of the colleges that have the nickname the Aggies, you know that they were initially started out as an agricultural college. Okay? Agra means farm. Culture obviously means community. So when you study agriculture, you're studying the culture of farming. Okay? Next question, is it learned, or is it something that it's a trait that we have?
It's learned.
Okay, it is learned. For a long time, people have thought, well, that's what I grew up, and how up and stuff, well, you did learn that, okay? When it comes to learning cultures, there are two ways we do it. One is by enculturation, and the other one is by acculturation. Enculturation means it's the process where you learn about the culture you were born into, so you grew up in it, okay? That's how you learned it. Acculturation is the process where you learn a culture that's different from yours. If most of us grew up in the United States, so we have kind of a set cultural idea. And if we want to learn about any other culture, we have to go through this acculturation way of doing things, learning a culture that's different from ours. So it's learned. That's one aspect. Another characteristic that it's shared. Culture is not an individual thing, is it? When you think about it, we all have some form of shared belief system. It's multifaceted. And what that means is that even though we have norms that are specific to a culture, it affects each of us differently. So it has multiple levels to it. It's dynamic, which means that it's constantly changing. Would you agree with that? I've lived it. I grew up I was a kid in the 1960s, and I was a teen in the 1970s. You think things have changed? You guys have had some of a taste of it with the war going on over in Iraq and Afghanistan. I grew up during the Vietnam era. Every single night, we would have something on TV showing film what's going on over there. And I grew up thinking that I was going to be going to war when I got older. We didn't see an end to it. Another thing that we dealt with back then was the things that were going on in the South with the African Americans. It was just kind of coming out of the end of that. We're separate restrooms, drinking fountains, whatever. That was 1968, okay? And but it's changed. And I would say it changed for the better from my viewpoint, okay? The other characteristic, the last one, is that the identities overlap. So let's take a look at the identities here. The first one, in the United States, we have a national identity, right? We're Americans, okay? On a regional level, are there different regions in the United States that are culturally different? Okay, you think about the Northeast in the United States. You talk about the South, the Midwest. We tend to break those things down, don't we? Then California has its own culture. Okay, there's California culture. So region by region, there's that breakdown. But we're all Americans, right? Okay. Do we separate ourselves by class? When I talk about class, what am I talking about?
Finding upper, lower classes.
Okay.
Socioeconomic.
So socially, economically, which is, yeah, there, okay? So we separate ourselves, there's rich, there's poor, people with different social standings, middle class. Ethnicity, do you think? Yeah, we do. Professional, do you think in the workplace, there's a culture there that's different? Okay, how about age? You guys probably keep hearing about the baby boomer generation, right? I'm on the tail end of that, okay? We have a lot more older folks now than we used to. People are living longer. So, but we have these different generations that are broken down. Baby boomers, Generation X, Y, Z, whatever they're calling them these days. And gender, do you think gender? We're separated by gender too? I would say so. So all these identities overlap under one big one. Okay, and that's where I think where we're seeing things. So taking all of those characteristics into consideration, I think a better definition for culture is this, that it's a learned set of shared interpretations. It's how we interpret it about beliefs, values, norms, which affect the behaviors of a relatively large group of people. Okay? So that's culture. Now, when we speak of culture, what word do you think comes up when we're talking about differences? What's the term that's used? Diversity? You've heard the term diversity? Okay. Diversity encompasses acceptance and respect. It means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. When it comes to public speaking, do you think that's going to be important to be diverse in how we look at our audience? I think it's true that we should. So we think differently. When we think differently, do you think problems are created?
Nope.
Oh yeah, huge, big time. It affects how we, oops, let me go back. It affects how we interact with people. So it's going to affect our public speaking, isn't it? Because of the differences. You know, and we've gone from a society that when the United States was first created, people came from all over the place, and we had assimilated this new American dream, okay? So we kind of, coming from all these cultures, we assimilated, but we also, at the same time, had our pockets. You know, you go to New York City, there's an Italian section, there's a Jewish section, there's, you know, that is just kind of how we are. But we were trying to encompass all of these things into one national type of culture, or American culture. But as time has gone on, we are now more and more valuing diversity, because I hate to say this, but I think we're being forced almost into it because of the way society is now. You know, we have the internet where we can go anywhere in the world on the internet. Yes.
You said forced into, sorry, I missed the
We're
sentence
almost,
right before
I
that.
think, it's my personal view, but I think over time we've kind of had to, or been forced to really learn about diversity.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Especially when you start to think, you know, people have a lawsuit because they've been wronged or whatever it might be. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So we're almost required, I guess not forced is probably not the right word for it, but maybe required to be more valuing this diversity.
Like especially like in the teaching world, like where you used to teach to maybe a one type of person.
Mhm.
Now, you know, some of the requirements are to take a second language and to learn how to teach a class, a
Mhm.
diverse class. And we've been kind of forced to do that.
Right.
Because there are requirements,
Mhm.
like nursing or education or.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see that.
So there's more of a requirement, but I think we need to understand that. We've moved past just everybody accepting this is how you're supposed to do it. You know, you hear the argument out there, well, you come to America, you need to learn to speak English, right? You've heard that one before? Okay. Well, those are things that we deal with when it comes to culture. And some of those reasons, we've already talked about them, but let's go through them anyway.
I have a comment
Yes.
on that last comment you made.
Uh-huh.
I read a paper in my English class by a fellow student, and she commented on how she's from China and she came over here to go to school, and how people come up to her and say hello in Chinese with a big smile on their face, and she thinks it's kind of offensive, like, you know, I've had to learn a lot more than hello just to survive over here in your country. Anyways, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. So let's talk about it. Demographics have changed, right? That's why we're having to start valuing diversity. Our demographics have changed. Depending on where you live, more and more you're seeing the demographics there. Sensitivity to differences. Do you think we're a lot more sensitive to people, the differences in people now than we used to be? So because of this sensitivity, we're starting to value diversity. Economic and political. Okay. Some of the political things that are going on are requiring us to look at things differently. Economically, you know, you think about it. A lot of people that were in the middle class, or guess where they're at? They're poor. Some of them are poor. And so this is kind of something new that they have to learn, right? Technology has changed. You think about with technology, it's causing a lot of us to either how we communicate with one another, whatever it might be, it's causing this value of diversity, and of course, understanding that cultures communicate differently. I think we're more and more aware of that now. So what we need to do is we need to learn about other cultures, and other cultures need to learn about us. I think it's a two-way street there. So let's look at some of the rules. And this is where I hope you guys can share with me your experiences. I have a relative few of them as well that I've experienced, but I want you guys to participate in this part of it. The first one is formal versus informal. What am I talking about when we're talking about cultures, formally and informal cultures? Any thoughts?
Probably old traditions of a culture that are, like, no matter what culture you go to, I mean, there's old culture and new culture and that culture within the generations.
Okay.
Like Japan, I mean, their young generation has a different set of values than perhaps their parents or grandparents.
Okay.
I think that can be seen in formal and informal, in that it seems like, especially in the United States, we're becoming less and less formal.
Right.
Like, generally, this would be considered a formal setting, but I'm sure it was a much more formal setting 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So I can see what you're saying there, but I think generally formal and informal is like at home with friends is informal, and in a public setting is considered more formal.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. You have some cultures that are pretty laid back. Okay. The United States, and some of the stuff I read, is considered a more informal culture. You can see it, you walk up the walk here as you're going to your next class, and you wave at somebody, you don't even know them. Kind of laid back, right? Hey, how you doing? That kind of thing, where you have some cultures that are more formal. One of the distinct differences I saw in my study and reading is that in Germany, they tend to be more formal in their interactions. They use titles, you know, the old European thing about, kings and queens and, that kind of thing, yes.
Yeah, I lived in Germany for a couple of years, and especially with the German language, there's specific ways you talk to different people. When you talk to your parents or adults, if you're a teenager that you don't know, or grandparents, you use very formal language. But when you're with your friends or whatever, younger kids than you, people younger than you, then you use a more formal language. And everything is still very formal.
Okay.
Germans just don't go around saying hi
Yeah.
to people on the streets.
So if you had a Walmart in Germany, you probably wouldn't have a greeter.
There aren't Walmarts in Germany.
I know, but I'm just saying, if you had a Walmart in Germany, you probably wouldn't have a greeter at the door
No.
saying, hey, welcome to Walmart.
Maybe a different look
Definitely
on the
not.
smiley face.
It might be, yeah, more stern,
Yeah.
stern like. Okay. How about customs? What am I talking about customs wise?
Like Cajun cooking and stuff.
Okay, well, yeah, food.
Tradition.
Traditions. What kind, how many of you have been out of the United States? Okay, where have you been? Let's kind of figure out where people have been. Yes, where have you been?
Oh, I've been to Jamaica and Mexico.
Jamaica, Mexico.
Costa Rica and Romania.
Okay,
Australia, Mexico.
okay.
Canada,
Canada, okay.
Jamaica, Cuba, and Mexico.
Okay,
Germany.
Germany.
Mexico.
Okay.
Portugal.
Okay. So we have kind of a diverse experience here. What are some of the customs of these places you've been to?
Australia's really laid back.
Okay.
They go to college in board shorts and flip-flops.
Wow, okay. Yes.
Well, this is just what my friend told me, but he went to France for a week, and he said that the French people think that we're like just incredibly rude because we're always talking on our cell phones. And he said that when he was there, he didn't see hardly anybody on their phones. And here, you can't go anywhere and see people not on their phones.
Okay. These are some newer ones that I haven't heard of, yes.
When I went to Jamaica, the hotel suggested that we just stay at the hotel because there's a lot of crime outside. And there were like little shops that you could go to right outside the hotel, and you had to sign a thing saying you were leaving and what time you'd be back, or they'd come looking for you.
Oh, wow.
When you went to the shops.
Oh, that sounds scary.
Wow, that's creepy.
Yeah, it
I
was.
don't think I'm going to Jamaica.
Yeah, don't
It was,
Your
it's
hotel.
fine once you stay. If you stay in your hotel, everyone's super nice and really friendly, and everyone in the shops are really great. But they just want to make sure, just because they have such a big crime.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the same kind of thing about Jamaica. Something I noticed is it's rich and poor in Jamaica. There's no in between. And like what she said when I was there, we was just there on a cruise. But same thing, like they told you not to take taxis there that wasn't through your cruise liner stuff because it wasn't safe. I remember going to this little shopping plaza, and it had a huge wall built around it, and at the gate they had two 50 cal machine guns sitting at the gate. They had armored soldiers and stuff, machine guns everywhere guarding it. And if you took tours or anything, I mean, you go around, you went past the slums where you'd see boxes and tin houses, and you go up on the hills and stuff, and you'd see the resorts and millionaires, but there wasn't much in between. It was rich or poor there. So if you had money, you got rich. If you didn't, you just got more poverty. So
Wow.
it's a lot more diverse.
Yes.
Even in Germany, I spent most of my time in the former East German part of the country. And just the whole kind of attitude of the people. In the East, they're even more closed and they don't talk with people. The West Germans are more free to openly talk with people on the streets and whatnot, or have a friendly conversation on a train or a bus. But in the East, because of the culture that they had for so many years, that the customs are different, even though they are still one country.
Okay, yeah, because it wasn't till recent history that they joined. Yes.
We met these guys from Switzerland, and like we approach people with a handshake, and they're just natural to. They do 3 kisses, and they start with like I think the left side, and it was weird when we like just gave them a handshake. They just wanted to go like that because that's just what they're used to. That's just their
Right.
culture.
And where you're not used to it, you go, ooh. Okay.
I noticed everyone drinks espresso, not coffee. They don't drink coffee, they all drink espresso.
In
Portugal,
Portugal,
in
okay.
Spain, and they drink a lot of wine, you know, like they offer you wine like at every lunch and every dinner.
Okay.
There's not really like, you know, you can get hard liquor over there, but no one drinks it, everyone just drinks wine.
Okay. All right, yes.
And this is probably different, like, I guess I should say Utah's and the East Coast.
Right.
But I had a teammate from Poland, and it was almost unheard of if you were married before you were 30. Like, her sister was 37 and just barely getting married and engaged, and that was normal for them. Their whole dating lifestyle was different. It's normal for them to live with someone before they're married, and that also goes into religion too, but I just thought it was way different because she came here to the United States for the first time in college, and everyone around her was married, and she just thought it was so different.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
I think it's different even from state to state, because I'm from Vegas and everyone's like, when I came here, everyone's like so nice, and I think it's just different from state to state, because even back east, like, people are nice there, and it's just like so different from state to state, rather than even country to country.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, there are customs, like you mentioned handshaking. We handshake in the United States. In some countries, they bow in various different ways. The kissing on the cheek, that's another custom. In those I know that have gone to Japan have told me that before you enter someone's home, you take your shoes off. You know, those are customs. And so it's important we learn that. Customs like gift giving. In some cultures it's expected, others not. So you have to understand the customs. We're slowly running out of time here, but how about dress? How about style of dress? Do you think it's different from culture to culture? You go to the Middle East, you know, it has been the practice that women wear the burqas, yeah, okay, on their face, okay. And I remember in the military, we had a lot of issues with that because our lady soldiers would be, you know, just in uniform like everybody else, and so there was a lot of issues in that way. I think even within generations in the United States, you know, when I grew up, you went to a job, you were in a suit and a tie for the guys, and ladies, pretty conservative dresses when you went to a job interview. And I've noticed that that's really changed a lot. And how people go to job interviews. And so we need to understand that there are different styles of dress, time frame. When we talk about time, there are some cultures that it's fashion, you need to be fashionably late, okay? In some cultures. Other cultures, you need to, if you're not on time, it affects how someone thinks of you. And, you know, for a lot of you have been to Mexico. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Mexico, they have what is called a siesta, right? Okay. Now, when people that aren't part of that culture see that, what do you think kind of hits in their mind? Lazy, maybe? Yeah. Oh, these people are lazy. Do you think that affects how we perceive them? But why do they have a siesta? What's that?
So they're more productive in the afternoon?
They work.
So the rest of their days?
They work, what, 12, 15 hours a day?
Yeah, I agree.
And so to have a siesta in the middle of the afternoon is a good thing because it allows them to, like you say, be more productive. But sometimes you get locked in those stereotypes of people being lazy. And I'd like to integrate siestas into our culture, but I don't know, we're still got to work on that one. So, what I'm saying is we run into stereotyping, don't we? Stereotyping is a conventional, formulaic, and oversimplified conception, opinion, or message about whatever culture it might be. And what we're doing in that is we think of people in categories, don't we? Is it a good thing?
Sometimes it can be.
Sometimes it can be,
But I
but
think we use
Right,
it
it
for
is.
protection.
Can be both good and bad.
You know, groups, you know, they stay in their groups because that's what they're comfortable with, that's what they're familiar with, and that helps them feel safe.
right. But for the most part, we have preconceived ideas. Are those ideas always true?
No.
Nope. They're not, are they? Growing up in the faith that I'm in, people have some preconceived ideas of what I think and believe, whether they're true or not. And so these preconceived ideas can have a positive or it can have a negative effect, right? So what we need to do is, when we feel like we're stereotyping, are we looking at it negatively or are we looking at it positively? Again, if you're giving a presentation and you have people from a variety of cultures, you need to ensure that what you are presenting meets a cultural, or at least there's some understanding there. So using whatever examples that you're going to use that the audience can relate to. So how do we deal with this stereotype and cultural differences? We can avoid them. That's probably not a good idea. We can accommodate, which I think we try to do. I know the college tries to accommodate folks with disabilities and such. We can force people, but that's probably not a good way of doing it. You can educate people, and that's my goal today is really to help you, to educate you on culture. You can negotiate and you can collaborate. Those are the 6 ways that we can deal with these issues. Obviously, you can pick out probably the better of the 6 there. So, how does this relate to public speaking? It's just not about speaking. It's about your audience. Okay? You need to understand culture in order to understand your audience. And so how this works is the information that you're presenting doesn't change, but what changes is the presentation, how you present it, the examples you use, the pictures you may use in your PowerPoint. All of those things need to match culturally. For example, if you're speaking to a group of doctors, if you're using a PowerPoint, what kind of pictures should you use maybe if you're using pictures? Pictures of doctors, right? Anything that's medical setting in your pictures. Whatever audience you're speaking to, those are the kind of things that you use so the audience can relate to it, whatever their cultures are. And pick stories, statistics, and proofs based on those cultures. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see, culture affects and influences our interaction with others. I think you would agree with that, right? Okay. And last but not least, the problems that we have are due to a lack of knowledge and fear. Now, you do have